intro, but
Yeah, start over. Yeah.
what's going on, Macropod peeps? Marcos and I joined by Colt Curtis. I wanted to jump on this conversation. I hit Colt up. I've been seeing his content online, speaking with the previous jiu-jitsu instructor, Eric Medina. Colt and I don't know if Colt remembers, but he and I rolled a few times together. And I will remember this day with Colt where Colt let me just have a Kimura. And he was like, no, go ahead, finish it. And I was like, and a Kimura, for those listening, is like an arm lock, shoulder lock. And he like let me finish it. And I was like, nah, dude, let me roll with you. Let me. And then I realized he wasn't trying to go hard that day, and I was over here trying to compete and kill people because I was just in that space. And he's like, no, we're just rolling, we're flow rolling. And that was like a moment where I thought about, and I befriended you, and I realized like who you were, and I was like, oh, he's military vet, could have killed me any moment if he wanted to.
Yeah.
And he has this moving company and all these things. But I wanted to jump on because I saw your content, and Marcos and I talked about it, but like this stuff about self-development, just kind of helping other people out. And, you have this content that you're creating. But yeah, we were just kind of talking right before this hit record button. But Colt, for you, just kind of, again, go back a little bit there, who you were, where you're at, and what's going on to just get this conversation rolling about what you're talking about.
Yeah, man. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me on the podcast as well. Yeah, we got our own little podcast called 45 on the Hour. Kind of started as just like a fluke thing. We weren't really preparing for it. So I got to go back a little bit. I'll go back when I was like 37. I'm 41 now. I started having panic attacks and anxiety. I had no idea what that was, man. And honestly, like my background's pretty crazy. So not being able to control your brain was the first thing that ever scared me. Right. And I think as men, we don't realize how much our emotions have a play in our lives. We really don't. And I think that men just in general keep it inside and we just hold it on. And that's why men die earlier, because we just keep in that stress. It's our job to lead and, be a man and whatever. But you can be a man and you can have emotions. I believe that you can have both. And I think that the more you understand emotions, the better that you can understand people, and people develop a level of respect for that. But to answer your question, we went back. Let's go back to when I was like 37. Started having panic attacks, anxiety. Had no idea what it was. Thought I was like dying. Started giving me like negative thoughts. At the time I was running my moving company, I was driving around the country because it was like around like 2019-ish, something, 2020. Everything was hitting the fan. There was no one working, but there was all this money to be had. So I was working like crazy. I got 3 daughters, got full businesses, all kinds of stuff. I'm a former vet, so, being a combat vet, I was pretty already at it with like working hard. Like, it wasn't hard for me to do that, but I was never focusing on my emotions. I was always just letting my mind run rampant. So I started having these panic attacks, whatever. Realized I had to like figure things out. So I sold half my company. My thoughts were getting worse. I got medication from the VA, made me have even crazier thoughts. I wanted to kill myself. Once I hit rock bottom, and I believe, and I tell people this, like rock bottom's where you're looking at that black hole in the ground, and jumping in it feels better than standing in the current present you're at, on that soil. So if you can realize that, and you're like, wow, jumping into that black hole, well, that's where you were at. Yeah, that's where I was at. So I needed to figure out a way to kill off the old person that I was and recreate a new person. But I knew that I had to stay alive for my kids. I saw something online. You guys are Instagram people, Facebook people, you guys know about the internet, but there's a guy named Ed Milet. You guys are familiar with him. I was going through so much shit in my brain. I was going moment by moment. I wasn't even at the day by day anymore or the hour by hour. It was moment by moment. It was literally like within seconds of taking my life. There was a moment where like I saw something on Ed Milet's thing, and I was trying to research stuff to help me out before it was too much. And Ed Milet had this thing where he was talking about your thoughts, how 92% of your thoughts are the same as it was the day before, and the day before that, and the day before that. So that leaves about 8% that you're able to change mentally, but it's compiling. So you start focusing on that 8%, it'll compile over time and it'll start changing the way that you feel. I was like, okay, So I need to control my thoughts. Well, in school, high school, I mean, you guys went to high school. Did anyone ever say, hey, you got to understand your thoughts and you got to be aware of them and you got to control them because you can't just let them think for themselves, right?
Do you mean just in general or just like?
Yeah, just in general. Do you remember ever having like a class? Like we had, sex ed class, we had like, mechanics class, like or whatever.
It's funny because a lot of the health classes I like skipped over and did them virtually, which may not have been a thing for you, Colt, at the time. I don't. Oh, how old are you again?
41.
41. Okay. So virtual school was like still kind of like new and up and coming like when I was in school. So you could like opt into doing these classes. Most of them were health related. So you can like free up elective credits and like go do PE, like, you know what I mean? Like during your day. And I was like, oh shit. Like, so a lot of those things that like were health specific, I kind of skipped over and there wasn't really any emphasis on anything going on in the head. I think the only thing that helped me with my headspace was honestly sports and then
Right.
having to deal with failure with baseball because if you're, a 300 hitter in like the pros, like you're all time, you're going to the Hall of Fame effectively. So that was how I would process most things was like, how am I going to get better after this failure point, and, yeah, so most of the things were kind of that like more of an internal battle to understand that these like negative things, like I am, like it doesn't define me, so to speak. But it took a lot to get out of it.
To try to get to it, like no one really ever like taught me that personally. And
Yeah,
if no one ever said like, hey, we got to have a class on your thoughts and how you think and how you're aware of things and what you think about, you end up believing. And if you end up believing that, it ends up coming out and whatnot, and you don't even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
So as I was learning from Ed Milet, some guy named Wes Watson online that talks a lot about self-help. And I started realizing where they got their information from, and it was the past Stoics, like the ancient philosophers, like old people, like I want to say his name right. It's Epictetus.
Epictetus.
Epictetus, yeah. Marcus Aurelius and Genghis Khan, Shen Tzu, and so they're some wartime people and whatnot. Started studying their books and reading and reading and reading. I engulfed my whole brain all day long with headphones until the point to where all I could think about was what they were telling me because I couldn't control my brain. It was so full to the point to where I literally wanted to drill a hole in it because it felt so like full and clouded. And I know a lot of people that suffer trauma and wartime vets deal with this. They deal with their thoughts. So everyone talks about how we can help vets with this and that and getting them into horseback riding or shooting guns or jujitsu even, which is what helped me get off of, I was addicted to medication when I got out of the Marine Corps. So going back, my lifestyle was a little difficult growing up. Before I got to that point, the things that I dealt with, I had a father that left when I was 5. My dad was a transgender. I didn't know it at the time, but he left my mom to go pursue that. I grew up in a poor, single family home, just me and my sister. We moved to Canyon Country. Was hanging around a bunch of knuckleheads at the time, just trying to figure it out. Little, gangish type groups. Just didn't have the direction. Barely graduated high school, went in the Marine Corps, did a tour in Iraq, got out like a week after, wasn't ready for it, was homeless, was on the streets for a while, trying to figure it out. Didn't really have the love from my family that I thought I needed at the time, but my mom was trying to teach me a lesson, I guess. Had a kid a few months later, became a single dad with a little girl, had no money, had no house. Bounced around from my house to house until I got stable. Worked 2 jobs, did all that, was in and out of marriages, was married and then got divorced, couldn't stop floating around between women and, medication, and my mind was just clear. Realized the person that I wasn't good, but at the same time, I just wanted to die. Got into motorcycle clubs just shortly after to try to find love and brotherhood. I got into a Marines motorcycle club, which was like a veteran club. That was kind of cool. But I wanted to take it a step up. I wanted to, be in a bigger club. And then I, prospected for the Hells Angels. And I was there for a few years. I think maybe a little over 2 years, something like that, between the whole status. After doing that, I found myself, losing my second wife again. And I just couldn't hold relationships together. My daughters all have different moms, and I just felt like my whole life was a shit show. And this whole effort of, trying to have someone else take me out because I didn't want to be alive because I didn't like the man that I was, I think is where that whole thing broke into fruition around 37. I think my limit just hit. And I was like, oh, I'm invincible. And then all of a sudden it was like, boom, no, you're not.
Yeah.
And then after that happened and I hit rock bottom, something just clicked. And I just decided I was going to go back to my roots. And I got into religion again. I've always been Christian, but I started learning from these, influencers, and then I got into, the Stoicism, and I started educating myself. I got off the medication. I got into jujitsu, which saved my life. I was taking about 12, 16 Norcos a day, man. I was killing myself.
Yeah.
Fighting medication battles because the VA was telling me that's what you needed. Ended up getting what I needed, which was surgery. Paid for it out of pocket. The VA wouldn't take care of it. And I got into this shit, which actually helped me a ton. And it saved my life, man. And I still do it to this day. I study about 2 to 3 hours worth of self-help stuff a day. My speech has gotten crazy better. I've always been a pretty confident dude, but now I just want to help people because I got to a point to where I realized, like, do I want to be a human or do I want to be a vessel? And that's what I always tell men. A lot of guys, I do help out a lot of guys on the side of all different walks of life. People reach out to me and whatnot. Right now I do it for free. And I always tell them, like, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a vessel, like an offering, or do you want to be just a normal dude?
Yeah.
And people say, I want to be a normal dude. It's like, okay, well, how far has that got you? Because right now you're a normal dude and you have been this whole time. If you get to the point of wanting to be an offering for others and almost like a spiritual present, like almost like you're superhuman, then you don't have a choice. You can't go off of your emotional feeling. You have to go off of your discipline, which you have no control over anything else. It's like, no, I have to do this. It's part of my, my systems. And this is the way that I need to operate because I know this is good for me.
Yeah.
And you just keep doing it, even if you don't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
So I got into this whole system where I have all these things that I do. I showed on my Instagram. I have a pretty consistent schedule with things that I do. I talk about self-help pretty often and the things that have helped me. And I've helped a ton of people so far. And that's just what I promote. And then we got into the podcast because it was just one of those things people kept saying, like, you should open a podcast and you should try this thing.
I think your message gets a little bit wider. Well, no, first and foremost, dude, amazing, epic story. I think we could start anywhere there and all of that. First off, I just want to say, I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you're still on this earth with us. And there was that powerful force that came in and was able to have that wherewithal within you. And thank you for your service. I don't think our vets get that much help. I mean, the fact that I was just working with a vet the other day who has MS, and I was like, he has MS, but he doesn't have the proper resources to get that taken care of. It just doesn't make sense. And so he does a lot of things out of pocket, right? And it's like, this guy, put the country on his back, is willing to die for this country. We should be able to help these people out. But I think what you're talking about is so big, Colt. That's why I want to jump in, because I was listening to the pod with you and Eric and talk about like men specifically, men's mental health, men's day-to-day, the issues around these things. And it seems like you had this rock bottom moment, and this rock bottom moment has helped you become a student within yourself, right?
Right.
I love the Ed Mylett stuff. I've got to hang out with that guy before. In like a room of like other coaches, and we talked about his faith, talk about his stuff, and it always comes back to like tuning this, back to that faith, tuning this, and then from there being able to adjust accordingly. And then the Stoics, I mean, Marcos doesn't hear enough from me, but like I keep showing this. That's my little background, memento mori, amor fati, right? Remember your death, love your fate. That's just my thing. It's just, the Stoicism is a great operating manual, because it makes you think. Like Marcus Aurelius, you read Meditations, right? he questions his own thoughts. He's like, wait, why am I thinking this? Like, what is my boundary around this? Is this helping me out? And it's kind of weird to think that the general, the emperor, the number one guy of the Roman Empire at one point at the height of its supremacy, this guy's like taking an hour a day to like talk to himself like, yo, what's going on, dude? Are you good? Like, are you trying to get better? And it makes you realize like those standards have to be within yourself. Like I do a daily breath work and daily like gratitude and daily like affirmations of like sending love and peace to the people I love. And if it's not for those daily disciplines, I don't think I move forward in certain aspects of my life, right? The daily journaling. I know Marcos talks about that too, where it's like, it doesn't have to be the perfect form of journaling, whether you just speak to a phone, like, hey, these are my thoughts right now. Or Marcos and I started this podcast too, Colt, just because it was really good for our mental health. Like,
Dude, that's why I do it. Honestly, that's why I do it, man. And it's funny you say that because my podcast is more of like a, what do you call that? Like if you were to go like shooting or fishing,
deflating,
like a hobby,
like you just
like a hobby.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. So for me, it's just my my little thing. You know, it costed a lot of money to do what we did, just to set it up. It took me about a year and a half to just get all the finances together and everything because it's not cheap. If you see the way it looks and stuff like that with
No, I've
cameras.
seen the studio.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So I didn't think I was going to go that big, but I don't know how to not go big or go home. I really don't. It's everything I do is it's there's no level other than full speed for me. And I don't know if that's like a thing of like that most veterans have. Most vets, like especially combat vets, have this energy drive. It's almost like a cell that's inside of you, like a nuclear cell. It's weird. It's not normal. And you feel it if you talk to them. It's almost like the energy is just flowing constantly. And that's a good and that's a bad thing. I think what I try to teach a lot of these vets that are in the same boat as me is that they have to control that energy and they have to know where to release it. A lot of these vets have problems with going full bore and they just they go over the top and I call it redlining. You can't redline for too long without crashing. You know, it's like, you know, in a vehicle where you haven't shifted in a while, you know, and you're revving it past that 8, you know, and it's about to hit 9. How much longer can you hold on until the engine might blow, right? Because it gets too hot. So I always tell them like, hey, you guys got to treat your bodies like an engine. You know, you got to make sure it's cool, make sure you're changing the oil, make sure it's running at a good temperature, you know, because that's what we are as men. I try to relate everything to like manly stuff when I'm trying to talk to guys. A lot of guys, believe it or not, feel sorry for themselves these days, man. A bunch of little sissies lately, you know. A lot of guys, you know. I hate to say
Marcos
it,
was talking about this last week, dude.
it's just. Yo, what do you say, Marco? What do you say?
I mean, did I say sissies, Seamus?
You didn't say sissies. You said people are soft. Lots of people are soft nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, even my son's soccer games are fucking soft, dude. It makes me upset. I'm like, it's this, like, we're not out here to win. I'm like, well, if we're not out here to fucking win, why are we out here? Like, if I don't like, you know, like, and also like the game itself for him, like, I was like, man, I feel like at 6, 7, I was playing with a goalie. There's no goalie. I was like, how do you play soccer without a goalie? Why are we playing 4-man soccer? Just throw somebody back there that has gloves on. Like, kids like that stuff. It's like the game. I get it. It's like developmental. We're always like this, like, here's your participation trophy, you know, type of society. And that's like, again, actually I threw away a lot of the things that my son has won up to this point. And my wife got really mad at me. I'm like, he's not wearing it. He's not like going and looking at the accolade. I'm like, it doesn't mean anything to him. Like, I want him to go back. Like, remember when we worked that and he has like a backstory to it. So yeah, I'm like, a lot of things in society have led to being kind of soft, and it sucks because, you know,
well,
I mean,
that's the thing. Yeah. I mean, Marcos, you're raising kids. I'm not raising kids. Colt's raising kids, but like, because I work with men, Colt, outside of my day-to-day with Synergenics, outside of my online coaching, I'm part of this group, Colt, which is super powerful. It's like a reboot group, especially from like out of control behaviors, sexual behaviors like addictions, pornography, sex, things like this. And like, we really help men go deeper into their self-image, right? And a lot of this stuff I think Marcos is talking about, where kids get soft, is there's no standards on how they should operate, and then they can do whatever they want. Next thing you know, no, you can't just do everything you want without the side effects of, well, the side effects of not getting what you truly desire. You just get what you call false victories, right? You get false victories. You don't get true victories.
Correct.
Yeah, and it was like the thing we talked about with our little group the other day, Seamus, where it was with two. They were a little. I mean, how old is Tina? Do you know how old she is, Seamus?
Like in her mid-50s.
Mid-50s. So there's these two older women that are where we have like this continuing education group, Colt, where we've we did this like long class with everybody, and then we're like, let's just keep things together. And right now the Zoom only has like 4 people just kind of chatting it up and talking and discussing like business stuff. Like they're like, we have to learn how to like reinvent ourselves to like deal with this strategy. But like the way that they broke down certain things, Seamus, Tina said something that was like very like uplifting, motivating, but like also kind of harsh at the same time. But like the way that like she like went after it, like in her tone, I was like, oh, that's good. Like, I mean, like meaning that like people should care more in a sense, right?
Right.
So like as I look at it with regards to like my son, like the other day he like broke down and was crying for like 20 minutes. His teacher told me. And I look at him, I was like, dude, when have I ever come down on you for caring about what you're doing? I know I'm not expecting you to be perfect. I just care if you try. And like I look at him and he then took it upon himself. He's like me, he wants to be a perfectionist. And I was like, dude, okay, at the same time, while I really admire that drive right now, also just give yourself some grace, like obviously in 6-year-old speak. But like I noticed that and I was like, why does he care this much about something right now? Like, this is probably a good thing, but also at the same time, I don't want him to be like so distraught. I want him to like figure out how to overcome it. So again, like that's how those ladies feel in that group. They're like, no, this could feel a little overwhelming. And like, where do we go? Where do we start? How do we do it? And Colt, we were kind of just discussing like how Seamus and I do this thing together, but we're so different as people that the relationships and the way that we go about like speaking things like into fruition are again, like a way that we're trying to project, like you said, like what kind of men do we want to work with, right? And then also what kind of women, because like we don't exclude that, but like we do niche down when it comes to our marketing to like more so for me, it's like more so dads, like people that are in the transitional phase of dadhood, in their 30s. Because I think 30-year-old dads versus 40-year-old dads, there is a very stark difference. 40-year-old dads are probably a little more developed in terms of like relationship maturity potentially, right? They technically would probably be holding a job a little bit longer and maybe a little bit further in their professional careers versus like the 30-year-olds like trying to invent themselves also with the identity of being a dad at the same time. So there's like just unique like psychological processing going on, which I'm finding really interesting because those conversations with like 40-year-old dads versus 30-year-old dads versus people in their 20s, they're all massively different. And also the goals that drive people, do they need kind of to do what you're doing and have that parasocial relationship, listening to 2 or 3 hours worth of like, well, quote, self-help, whatever you define as that, to help them get their mind like screwed on right. Because, when you mentioned that, I'm like, I kind of do the same thing. I'm listening to people that I feel are admirable characters, that I like their authenticity and I like how they're portraying information and how they're helping a bigger audience as a whole.
Yeah, I like that. So for me, I'm very, very difficult at looking up to another man. It's very difficult for me to look up to another man. That's what I'm trying to say. So
yeah.
I even think in this world, outside of God Himself, there's maybe under 3 to 5 people maybe that I would take advice from. Because I feel like when I walk into a room, I feel like I'm taking ownership of the room. Okay, that's my room, and that's just how I feel. I don't know if that's like a Marine Corps thing, a confidence thing, but I always feel like unless you can prove to me that you've done more than me, I'm taking charge here, right? And unless like more than I know, then maybe you can take on that task. Maybe you can take on that one thing. But as far as like coordination, I'm going to make sure that we're successful.
Yeah.
That's like a confidence thing that a lot of guys lack these days. And I think confidence has to do with pride, like knowing your character, being prideful inside of who you are and who you've become. A lot of men struggle with that. They struggle with that. Even young men these days are just like, oh, boo hoo, I was raised in a poor family. boo-hoo, I'm not
Yeah.
fit, I'm fat, you know, and they have all these things that they're developing, and it's like, okay, well, then change it. But it's not going to change tomorrow. You got to decide, you know, what's your purpose? So I always tell people, like, what's your why? What's your why? And they're like, what do you mean why? Well, if you can figure out your why, like, what is it that motivates you to stay here in what we see? Like, what's your why? For most people that are parents, it's our kids. You know, for you, Seamus, it's, I don't know. It could be wanting something.
He's engaged, so
I'm engaged, so I'll be getting the kids soon. I've been talking to Marcos. I'm like, Marcos, what do I do at this stage?
Yeah. And I told him I'm the last person to ask advice there, because I didn't go through a long relationship before, like, my wife and I got married. But at the same time, I'm like, Seamus is very much so a planner. So his why is like making sure he has the financial capacity to get to the place where he thinks he could then go into like fatherhood and being a good husband. So, I mean,
which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I'm not that way. I'm a risk taker. I believe in being uncomfortable all the time. That's something that I need to work on, but it's also something that got me here. But I also know that, you know, what got you there won't get you there. You know, there's that.
Yeah.
Going back to the why, if you're struggling and you're out there, you're just trying to figure out, you know, like, who am I? You know, like, how do I get what I need? Like, where is that? You need to figure out your non-negotiables first. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I always tell men. Figure out 10 non-negotiables. 10. If you have 8, I want 10. So things that you just cannot deal with or live without not doing or whatever. And you have to post it somewhere, and you have to tell somebody about it, because something that's not told doesn't exist necessarily.
It's in isolation. It's like in silos, you know?
Yeah. And then once you get that, then you've developed these character traits, and you posted it. You've told everyone, hey, I'm this person. This is who I am. Cool. All right, go be that person now, right? And then now you can create your disciplines, and you can create your trajectory, and that's your character. That's what you're starting off with, and your character's developed over the person that you become over time, the experiences that you've been through, and then, you know, what you believe in as far as, you know, living in reality and the true world, right? Whether that be like a certain religion or a certain individual type, and then to respect others and not infringe upon other people's rights and whatnot. You know, that's who you are. But once you figure out your why, because you've developed all those things, then you can figure out the how easier, because the how is always how people figure out or are trying to figure out, well, how do I get there? How do I become where Seamus is or Marcos is, you know, in his life, because I admire these guys. Well, first, you got to build the person that you would admire most, right? So every man or woman can do that. You can sit back and say, okay, this is the person that I think inside my mind I would listen to. Because if you wouldn't listen to you, then why would you listen to yourself, right? You'd have to take on someone else and say, okay, well, this person, I like the way they are, so I'm going to take a little bit from them, a little bit from them, and then I'm going to piece together this person, and then I'm going to back it with my past, my history, my character, and then this is who I'm going to be, and then you got to create a schedule to get there, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't have a way of getting to where they want to be. They just go, oh, I'm going to get there, and then they wake up 10 years from now and they're still in the same position, and they don't know why. All that has to do with action, knowing who you want to be, knowing your goals, right? How you're going to get there, getting there as soon as possible.
I love that.
You know,
I love that. I want to say one thing on this. So in Stoicism, Colt, I love the fact that you're talking about like this list of 10, your identity, create this avatar, and then it's kind of like faking it till you make it. Like you take on this persona, that you become this persona, and then you listen to that persona in your head. And it's like almost like time as a concept. You're reaching out to the best version of you. Could be your 80-year-old, 90-year-old veteran self, and going like, this is what the best version of you said. But there's this concept, I would take it one step further, in when people are trying to figure out themselves. I tell people in Stoicism, it's called the antambulo. Ryan Holiday talks about this a lot. It is the person. It's the person that is a trail maker. It's so the emperor's on his seat. He's being carried by like people on a hot chair, and it's the person in front that creates the path. It's called the antambulo. And Ryan Holiday says the trail maker for the emperor makes a path for the emperor, but in doing so makes a path for himself. I think one of the best things I've always told people is like, be a servant leader at some point. If you're really struggling with who you are, be a servant leader. And that's the thing with me. I'm like, people are struggling with their health all the time. Okay, I'll help you out with your health. And in doing and helping people with their health, Marcos and I have conversations. I'm like, I haven't thought about this about my health. I should do that too. Like, so it's like these constant auto regulations of like, oh wow, like in helping others, I've helped myself. I think that's like one concept in it as well.
Correct. But that's just what you're doing right now. I mean, you guys are doing this, because, it obviously is good for you guys. It's like more of like maybe a hobby, or it's, trying to support something you're doing, but it also sounds like you guys enjoy doing it. Right. And it does help others, just talking,
Yeah.
it's just
Oh
great
yeah.
for everybody. But the person that I used to be, even 10 years ago was completely different than the person I am today. I'm just so happy about it and the change, because I should have been dead a long time ago, bro.
Yeah.
I've been in multiple motorcycle accidents. I've been shot at. I don't even know how many times. Shot back. I don't even know why I'm still here. And I feel, and I believe today that I don't believe in coincidences anymore. Right? Oh, that's a coincidence that we got on this podcast together. I don't believe in those. I believe it was like, there's a reason for it. And I believe that everything that happens in your life, there's a reason. If you're experiencing constant negativity, constant problems, it's because you're just paying back some karmic debt. And when people are going through these things where they say, hey, I'm dealing with this and that, and I just can't get out of it, I don't know what I'm going to do, I tell everyone, hey, it'll pass after enough time. But just remember, when you mess up, the devil don't take checks. So everything needs to be paid in full. So if you want to go off and you want to go break character, screw off, do whatever, go, bang a bunch of chicks, do a bunch of drugs and screw over people, you're going to pay for it eventually. And it might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, it could be 10 years from the road, but you're going to pay back that debt some way. And it's going to happen. And when you feel it, just take it in slowly, understand that it's going to pass. But from now on, you got to become the person that you would admire most. And if you start listening to this little voice, because we all have these two voices, right? Every man has this, every woman has it, where you got like voice A, which is like, hey, you should really get up earlier this morning. You should go to the gym. You should do what you're supposed to, listen to your family, you should, go get that job. Then you got the voice that's like, fuck off, go drink tonight, go, do this, go that, screw off, go burn a bunch of relationships. And you can listen to either or, right? But I believe those are like vibrations, you got your high and you got your low vibration. So the high vibration is more godlike, and then the low is more devilish like. That's just how I see things. And the more that I listen to this voice, and I'm not perfect, I'm not. I don't think any of us are. But the more that I listen to this voice, the better I feel. Because this voice is true. It's, what you're doing wrong. That achy feeling when you're doing something that's outside of your character, right? And most of us men like doing that. We like pushing our limits. Because that's just men. Men, we like to, we're predators, That's how we were back in the day. Nothing's really changed, We need to be out there, trying to figure out life. And, we don't really focus on our character and what things mean to us. But I think if we start listening to that voice and start realizing like, hey, this is not who I am, I can't do that. I think men out there that are struggling with mental health will feel better in the long run.
Yeah, well said. I mean, those frequencies, vibrations. Seamus, I feel like we need to introduce Colt to DP, because I feel like
DP.
DP Gates. So DP Gates, and you're in a path of self-development, like we all are. We meet certain people in our lives at certain times. Like Ed Milet came to you 4 years ago. I love Ed. I personally, I've been doing Tony Robbins stuff for a long time, but I've been saying this a lot lately because I've gotten to hang out with Ed. Like, I feel like Ed is more reachable. I'm a man of, Christ as well. And all these things. And I'm like, he seems more relatable, just the way he talks. I'm like, sometimes Tony, Marcos, I tell Marcos, like, Tony's just like this icon, like this fucking icon. Yeah. Like he's doing like these fucking stadium.
Yeah, he's almost like untouchable,
Yeah, he's untouchable.
I look at
But
Ed like more like a father figure, to be honest with
yeah,
you.
that's a great point.
My
Yeah, and
dad.
then
I look at him like
DP
that's dad,
is
you know. The
yeah,
way
DP is Bob Proctor's like number one guy. Bob Proctor was one of the self development guys that tons of books, tons of content. Bob Proctor passed, but DP has been helpful in keeping his legacy going. But Marcus, you were going to say something.
No, I was just saying that I feel like you two need to have the vibration and frequency and talk, because both the way that like you've been speaking and the way that he's talked about, like, you know, the energy and how everything flows and the flow states of everything are resonating with me, you know, to like be like, you guys would have probably a really good conversation and podcast with one another. And I'm sure he would be more than happy to give you some time in the future, because like you said, there's no coincidences per se, right? All the relationships that you build and people that you choose to be, you know, in your, you know, your core five, right? Like those, like you said, there's like 3 to 5 people that you would like really look up to, right? And I think there's constantly like, you know, your Mount Rushmore is constantly kind of funneling in and out a few different people, just kind of based on where you are in life, which is totally fine, because you're going into a new phase, or you put a new why down, like you said. Like my why right now is, you know, X, right? And whatever that thing is, you obviously then need to be like, okay, well, how am I getting there? And DP did a very similar exercise with us, where he was like, hey, you know, you need to write this statement, whether it's like financial statement or whatever, in the present tense, as if it's already happening to you versus it's going to happen to you. And then what are the characteristics of that identity that you need to embody to then make those things continue to surface and move forward? And we did that.
I like that. That's cool.
And we did that, and I can actually pull up the note because it's still on my phone. Because
Dude, Marcos, he did that, and then 90 days later, everything we said about the identity, about the things from said identity that we wanted, it was just kind of like we did this initial liftoff. You know, like when a spacecraft does its liftoff, that's initial push. That's effort. Like that's hard effort, willpower, all these things. But once you make it into space, the momentum just keeps going, right? Inertia. That's what happened to us. Somehow we got to 100 plus episodes, Colt. That was our 19th episode, Marcos. DP was our 19th episode, but because he forced us to ask those questions, and I didn't even say force, but he asked those questions, and Marcos and I went on like this tear. Dude, it was like a 6-month tear, Marcos. We were doing a podcast a day. Our business was growing. We were flying in the air multiple times. I think we were in the air combined times together, almost 100 times together. It was crazy. And then vibrations shifted. We had to
we pivoted when we should not have, and we try to take on things that were
sorry.
We try to do
can't do that.
we try to do some we try to do some things that we thought would be better, only to learn that, like, again, that was probably not where the universe wanted us to go. Like keeping this podcast as less of a business thing and more of like a way that we can create our own separate identities from is really what we learned. Because when we were doing that, it was like Seamus was growing, I was growing, you know, other people around us were growing, which was great. But then we're like, hey, let's merge our two worlds. And, you know, not that we have like it was conflicting for both of us, but realizing I was like, we're trying to treat this too much like a business when it doesn't even make any fucking money yet. So what are we doing? This is supposed to be the fun thing. And then let's go back into like that world and, you know, just keep up and again, use this as a form of therapy and a sounding board and get things done. Right. Like, you know, and bring on cool people and have good conversation. And then if people resonate with that, cool. Right. Like we're doing it for ourselves. Right. We don't necessarily need the TikTok virality and the growth.
We don't need it. I've literally asked guests, Marcos. I've literally Colt, like I'm bringing you on because it was like a selfish thing. I want to just talk to this guy about this mad stuff that he talked about. But I've also literally had like performance scientist specialists in here where I like had questions for Marcos. I'm like, I need these questions answered. I don't give a shit what the audience think. I need this question.
It's funny because with the podcast, you can get better answers having a podcast. I don't know what it is, but it's like a thing these days. If you actually bring somebody on and you have a topic you want to discuss, you're going to get better answers than asking them a direct answer like via Instagram or message or whatever, you know. It's just it just feels like that the podcasting is a more controlled center to really have like a better conversation. Because you know what, in the world right now, the reason why it's I mean, that's political, but like, I believe that like the world is the way it is because people are just very sensitive right now. They're just sensitive in the world. And I think it's a big issue right now. Because everyone's getting, their help where they're getting it and whatnot. And I think that people have just lost their way, dude. Think people have lost their way on like, just helping people and having conversation. That's what I'm trying to get at. People just don't communicate anymore. I don't know how long. I don't even know. Like even just texting, I bet you guys would say the same thing. If you text someone, like people just don't respond anymore. Like they just won't text you back. Even just like hiring a plumber. It's like you said 7:00. Why is it now 9
Marcos,
and there's no message?
This is what we talk about like every day with we just call it like retention or like communication services with our work, right, Marcos?
Oh yeah, we have a buddy in our I know he listens to this frequently too, and he's like, yeah, dude, I'm getting like 28-30% response rate. And I was like, it's sad that that's like exciting for us.
Jokingly as like with people communicating these days, is that what you're saying?
No, seriously. Like we will look at the analytics of people replying to us, and they pay us professional fees so that we would communicate with them and try to help them with additional service offerings. Crickets, man. So it's like, of course, why am I going to care about people if they're not going to care about themselves or reply to a message when we're literally, again, you would think that, oh, it's just an automated message. Like, no, we literally have to go into your account and create the SMS to then be sent, because our systems are not like really meant for mass retention scale. It wasn't built that way. So of course we want to fix that so that there's, more of like being more of a pest. Because sometimes people are like, they're in the middle of something, it's 9:00 on the Pacific time zone, but it's 11:00 in Central, right? Like you never find people at the right time, so to speak. And then, the nice thing about what iPhones now do is that you can leave it as unread. It's like, hey, this is important to me. I've read the message. I need to get back to this at some point when I'm actually focused. Because, like I think that's part of it. Like our culture has been so text. I mean, shit, today, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different like channels of communication with just text messages alone, right? That's a lot of different conversations to kind of keep up here and or refer back to. And then there's obviously the phone call parts of it. And it's like you said, it's like, why are people just getting so bad at communicating? Well, because again, like you said, like people that are on these social media channels, we'll use Twitter as an example because that's kind of the Wild West where people just shoot their opinions everywhere. They don't want to sit there and have an actual conversation. They just want their opinion to be heard. And if you scream the loudest or say the most crazy things, then your opinion, quote, gets heard. So I think that's why for myself and Seamus,
that's attention though, right?
It's just attention-seeking behavior for sure, 100%.
Right. So that's kind of how I interact with people now. Like if you're an attention seeker, like I'll just wish you well and like let you be on your way. But if you're a solution solver and you're like, okay, well, let's get to a solution, let's do it. But I also don't let because I used to have a problem with this. I would get so angry. So I come from an angry person kind of background.
Mm-hmm.
Anger is. First of all, anger is
very intimate with anger, Colt. So,
right. I speaking to the all men, you get to the point where you're just like, I'm just gonna, So that's why you got outlets like jujitsu and things like that. But if you really get down to it and you break it down mentally, anger is just the lowest form of self. It's like one of the lower forms. Okay?
I heard it the other day, Colt. Like, and sorry to take over for a second, but
oh no, you're good. You're good.
One of the things that I said was, my buddy Sean, who we had on the pod too, he's like, there's levels of communication and like how the verbiage, guys just need sometimes more definitions. But he's like, anger. He's like, if I'm angry, I'm in my deepest fear. He's like, that's what it equals. Like anger means I'm in my deepest fear. Or if you're frustrated, you're confused. If you're irritated, you're annoyed. Like he's like trying to find these different levels. But yeah, you're right. Like I think like anger is this like deep, dark place, right? Or something like that.
Right. And so, I go back to, I started the podcast based on vets and first responders, that deal with a lot of these problems. Where I'm trying to get at is, I was trying to solve the whole anger issue. That was my thing with me. And I got a lot of information from people like Milet and things like that. And anger, what it is really, and I think about it, is I talk to myself in the third person. So when I get angry at something, whether it be from, a friend, a girlfriend, whatever, kids, I always say to myself, like, wait, you're feeling that and you want to do something and, your blood starts boiling, you get hot, right? What does anger do for you? It gets you triggered, it gets you edgy, it makes you want to like do something, right? like burst out energy, right? It's like an energy thing. So I always question myself. I like come out of myself and I look at myself almost as like a third person, almost like I'm looking at myself. And then I'm this person and I'm asking myself, like, what is it? Like, what's triggering that? Are you insecure about that? I like question myself, like, am I insecure about that? And I'll say no. And I'll say, are you afraid of that? Like, no. Okay, well, why are you being upset? Is it because of control? Do you need that control? Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, that's you can't control people. You guys let them be who they're going to be, right? And then just walk away and then just go back to yourself and then let the anger die down because you recognize something about yourself. And so now I'm more accepting of anything that anyone says than I ever have been, because you can't control people, but you can make people understand. People need to understand each other. And if there's no understanding, then you just wish them well. Yeah, you just wish them well and you say, okay, well, you believe this. I don't see things really the same way, but I'm willing to compromise because I want that relationship. But obviously you have other, prerogatives that you want to go do or whatever, and that's fine, but we need to do something about this. So I'm just going to let you be you and, go about your business your way. And, I want to pull out. So, and as business owners, I don't know if do you guys have a business and everything?
Yeah, we have a 9 to 5 and 5 to 9, as one of our other guests said.
Nice.
Nice. You have multiple businesses, right, Colt?
Yeah. I have a transportation company and then a restoration company. So, and even I have units. I rent out, so I have houses. But yeah, so it's hard. I deal with people in a lot of ways. I always try to be fair about things. Like, is this fair? And then when people are trying to, take from me, which used to always get angry when I'd feel like people were taking advantage of me. This was my biggest problem. I always ask, like, hey, I just want to do what's fair. I use that a lot. And I tell a lot of guys that talking about that have anger issues. Before you think about it, like, are you doing everything that's fair and everything that's right? Like, is it right or wrong? Okay. Whether it's right or wrong. Are you screwing that person over? Does it have to be that way? Could it have been different? And then typically you'll come back and be like, you know what? No, I can give them another day or so, pay me back or whatever. It's like just reasonable, let's be fair. And then I always ask people to be fair back to me. And you know damn well if they're not fair, you just have to cut your ties and move forward.
Yeah. I mean, fairness and the bit, like when you ask the question about like the business sense, it's like if it wasn't circle back to the beginning of this conversation where certain people are feeling like they are entitled to certain things, or that like like you said, not to be political, but like the government is the person that needs to kind of foot the bill so that we're all living a better life. And it's like, no, we are responsible of our own destination postcard, if you will, right? So how are we getting there? And when you ask the question about like, do you work for do you have a business? And it's like, yeah, and taking that like next step and like paying the money into like the business was the first step of then opening up a bunch of opportunities of learning and understanding, like even the way that you're paying for certain things, right? And how you might be utilizing something, i.e., this piece of equipment right here is a tax write-off because I use this to not only record videos for my clients, but also to try to use things to help with my marketing sense, right? Like even the little toys, quote unquote, that I enjoy are now something that is like deductible from my business expense. And I would not have learned how to go into that finer detail if it wasn't for taking a risk and not being afraid to like get after something, doesn't mean that the money is coming easier because I have a business. No, but like again, like same thing. Would I prefer people sending me money via Venmo because I don't have to pay a transaction fee of like 3%? Sure. On $300, I give $9 over to a credit card processing unit. That sucks. Right. And this is other things when you go into a business, an operation, a small mom and pop thing, you as a person then think about those things, which I think is kind of intriguing. And then you look at things in that scenario, like, how am I being treated in this moment? Is it fair? Quote, as a small business person to my other small business people trying to make a living. And I scrutinize people's service and attention to detail now because I'm like, I wouldn't want to come back here. I don't even want to tip this person because I don't feel like they've done anything exceptional. Right. And I saw a meme that said literally like, hey, if we're both standing up and I'm ordering, then I'm not tipping you. you know, like obviously.
Dude, the tipping economy was like such a weird thing, bro. Like where everything's a tip. Now they make the memes about it. Like it's just like a guy that gave you a water,
It's like,
20% tip,
and
please.
how much is on literally the first thing you get hit with? It's like, well, I mean, you haven't even done the service yet. How do I know if I should?
Well, that's a part of the economy. That's the way it is. So like everything's
Yeah.
so high
Yeah.
that no one can give raises anymore.
Yeah.
So business owners, I mean, I have, multiple companies. So for me, like I'm trying not to pay more if I don't have to. And I always go back to, why would I pay you more for something that you're already doing that you've already signed up for? Like what to, you're saying, hey, I've come on time for 120 days. It's like, yeah, that's your job. What have I hired you for that you're doing more of now? Like, have I given you another task?
Mhm.
Are you doing something additional? Well, no, I'm a good employee. It's like, well, you're supposed to be a good employee,
Mhm.
But the way it is right now is people are so in their heads about what they need to be compensated for. It's like, no, you deserve more. You deserve $1 million an hour. It's like, no, you need to work your ass off, and then you need to earn your worth through time, learn new trades, learn new tasks, and build up that person into the person that your company wants you to be. And then you
Yeah.
have other opportunities that come your way and you get compensated more. But people are just in their heads and they think, no. And so like, I think companies have just gotten fed up with it. And they're like, okay, well, yeah, we'll just make everything a tip thing. Because believe it or not, people will tip $5 for you to give them a $1 water. They just will. And so, you get enough of those and it's like, okay, well, oh, you want to raise? Cool. Well, you can take your no raise and we'll let you go hire the next person. And then the other person will come here and make an extra $300 a week on tips or whatever.
Yeah.
So
no, it's so funny you say that. Like I love your mindset, Colt, like about just like, hey, what were these issues coming from? Build a person up. How can we find solutions? Like Marcos and I did that. In Synergenics, our company.
nice.
Certain things happen. We said, all right, yes, man, like let's go. Like what do you need us to do? And like we stepped it up to the plate, made solutions happen. These solutions are still being worked out. And then in terms of a marketing thing, we were like, let's flip the bill. Let's go. Let's get you guys on, like, let's put some marketing spend out there. Let's figure this out. Like, let's make it happen. And Marcos and I like created like a whole guest series here. And like now we're having like conversations with the CEO. Like we got to coach up the CEO, right, Marcos, just to be on like this big network podcast. And now that like that's part of like an ESPN thing and like part of a Premier League. And it's like, all right, like I didn't need to get paid for that. I just want to be the person to be able to do that. And then we'll figure out the finances later. Right.
Yeah.
And that's like you guys said, like you were saying, I think both of you guys were saying, like we're planners, or maybe that was just you, Seamus. You're a planner, right?
Dude,
Seamus is like has a spreadsheet budget. Like I'm a planner, but not to that extreme.
It's funny. Like I'm really good at making money, but I'm also really good at spending it.
Yeah, you sound like
my
wife.
But I also believe in like paying people for what they're worth. Like if you say, hey, I'm worth $100 an hour and I really like you, and I feel like you're going to do a good job, I'll pay whatever you're worth. I won't negotiate. I don't believe in negotiating with people's worth. They say, hey, I'm worth this much per hour. I literally will just not hire you. I won't give you like, hey, can you do it for 10? I'm not that dude.
Yeah.
I'm not that guy. Yeah. And I've learned that. I learned that in the past that, that's just how business works. Business works better doing that. I'd rather charge more to get your business than to charge, to ask for less of you and then to keep my rates the same. I'd rather modify my company to fit your needs, to have the better person, because I believe that creates a better company altogether. And that's how I do interviews too. I don't really do interviews as much anymore, but when I did and I was looking for candidates, it was always giving the information in advance, like even all the bad. I have a podcast about this where I talk about, I like to give people the bad first. And it's kind of funny. And I was like, I just like to give people the bad first. I just say, hey, we're going to be here at this time. We won't do this. We will do this though, but we're not going to do this, 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 and this. And it's going to cost you this much. And it's going to be pretty expensive. And you're going to need 2 trucks and you're going to need this or whatever, And people just look at me like, man, are you trying to sell yourself out of this thing? I'm like, no, I'd rather just be honest with you. And believe it or not, people laugh at that and they sign on the dotted line every single time. Like people are so used to getting fed bullshit these days, like constant BS, like, no, it's money back guarantee. You can buy it and I'll give you your money. It's free. And it's like, it's just not reality. We all know there's a catch. So just give them the catch in advance.
Yeah.
And be dead up front and honest. And most people are afraid to like go with anyone other than just that right now. I don't know. And that's why self branding is so important. Like what you guys are doing right now, just being out there, communicating, conversating. The podcasting things helped me tremendously with conversating, communication. Man.
Yeah. You have how many episodes in your podcast? I was listening to the one that Seamus sent. He's like, hey, here's some homework for you. I was like, let's go take a listen.
Let me check. I can give you that number right now.
I didn't see the number.
I definitely will say this. Speaking, it's different. Marcus and I talk about this a lot. Like, I think we're at 28. We did the work outside because like people,
28?
How many episodes? 28.
Yeah, 28.
Amazing work. We speak a lot to people internally. We speak a lot to one-on-one with our clients, right? But there comes a point where our brand, we're going to have so many conversations that we're going to have to speak to audiences even bigger. It's weird how podcasting, how do you say it, Marcos? Like we supersided like a bunch of bullshit instead of having to be on like a circuit of speaking events. Well, we did 100+ episodes. Colt, you're going to do a bunch of episodes where you just compress time and have hours on hours of conversation. So the moment that you step up on stage or have like, you know, an insane guest like Ed Milet will come on your show. Ed's going to come on our show too. He will.
That would be awesome, bro. Oh man, he's so awesome.
You're not fumbling on your words. Like you've been there before, right? You've kind of hit that home run over and over and over again. You just did it on a smaller scale. And then at some point you did it in the big leagues, you know?
Well, that's what confidence is, man. Confidence is just doing something repetitively. Like if you stuck your hand in that dark hole, you know, that you're afraid to once. I mean, the first time you might be like, oh, I don't know, but then you got over it, right? You made yourself uncomfortable. Then the second time it's like, wait, hold on. Let's go back to the memory bank. Have you done that before? Yeah, you have. Okay, cool. I can do it again, but I'm a little nervous. Third time, fourth time. And then before you know it, it's just like nothing, right? Yeah. And that's just how it is with everything. I actually wanted to share something with you. I actually wrote the day that I realized that I had like been saved, you know, and I was safe again, like mentally. I had written Ed a message personally.
Let's get this out to Ed. We've had some people on the pod that have had Ed on theirs. So like if we can, Marcus, if we could figure this out on the grapevine and send this from Colt to Ed, that would be super.
I'm trying to find the message here. I'm trying to search for it on this meta thing because it has the meta. It's just not populating. But I wrote him a message. I'll find it to you and I can forward it to you. But I remember writing him and I basically told him, I was like, hey, I know you're probably not going to see this because of the amount of followers you have, but I want you to know that you saved my life. And I want you to know I look up to you like a father figure, and I admire you and I look up to you. And I'm very proud of the person that you've become. And thank you for saving me and helping me understand and develop new traits that are literally impenetrable now. And if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here. Thanks, Colt. I wrote him a message. And I've actually I actually interviewed Patrick Bet David, if you know who he is.
Yeah.
In person. I had a podcast with him. In Texas, with a group that I was a part of. It's called Veterans Battalion. It was 3 Marine Corps vets, actually four of us. It didn't end up working out. We had different schedules. They were real estate agents. I was a mover. But we ended up flying out to Texas and we interviewed him in person at his place, the Valuetainment Studio.
Yeah.
Out there in Dallas. Very cool stuff. Met him. Really nice guy. Didn't know how big he'd become, that he'd actually be interviewing The Rock just like a few weeks ago, on stage.
Yeah.
At his Vault conference. But he's phenomenal. And, I didn't even know how powerful that guy was. And I'm like,
he used to live here in Woodland Hills, like, just down the street from like Elko. Like
PHP was his company. Yeah. He took it off and his insurance company. He ended up selling that for a buttload of money. But yeah, no. And then, the guys that I was with ended up going to this thing where they were going to go see Ed Milet and Andy Frisella person. And it was one of these things called the Arete or whatever. Yeah. So I got those tickets a few years ago, went there, wanted to see Ed. I was actually really interested in seeing Ed speak in person, even though it was really Andy's thing, even though they were co-hosting it. I'd followed them both and it's super powerful to see Ed speak, man. He really is. I thought I was a confident guy, but that dude is just
he's speaking in LA one last time. Do you know what Growth Day LA is?
Heard of it.
So the last day is October 1st next week. It's a Tuesday. It's him and Ed and Brendan Bouchard. And I was
Going?
like, so I'm like, literally, like that Tuesday, it's like the weirdest thing. I'm like, the schedule is open. I'm like, it's open. It's open. There's nothing. I'm like, I can do it. I can do it. And my fiance, I just got my fiance, Brendan Bouchard's high performance like calendar. And she loves that guy. I love that guy too. But Ed, we both love Ed. And I was like, maybe this might be it. And I'll send you the thing and be like, yo, if you got time on Tuesday, go check out Ed. It's here in Glendale.
I wonder what the tickets are like.
It's like $129 or something like that.
Oh, that's nothing.
Yeah.
I thought it was like one of those where it's like $1,000, $850 or something.
No, it's like 4 speakers, a few hours on a Tuesday. Like nothing wild. But no, amazing. Colt, Marcos, I mean, I want to just be respectful of your time, Colt. I know you got to pick up your daughter, you got to do your thing. It's a Friday. Let's do this. I love this conversation. Marcos and I love conversations like this where it's more about looking in and looking at who you want to become, the boundaries you set within yourself, and then kind of like the tactics and understanding of how you got there. I think people find that very, very valuable. I feel like it doesn't even feel like it's been an hour, but I want to be respectful of your time. Marcos, would you have any other questions for Colt? And then just maybe just wrapping it up just to be just, we're doing good,
Man. Is there any other question? I feel like this is the thing that we were trying to figure out, is like how to end it and like ask a good question. Obviously, he mentioned quite a few different influential figures, whether it's currently existing or in the past, and books that you recommend. And it's a good question. All right, I got it actually. What is your why?
Mine?
Yeah.
Mine's my kids, my girls.
How old are your girls?
My oldest one's about to be 18. Middle one's 13, about to be 14. And then my youngest one is 9. So the reason why, and I know we're cutting it off, when I was going through all my shit, and I had to figure out what my why was, because that was what I learned. I was trying to think to myself, everything but my kids. I was like, is it my job? I gotta work to make money. Why am I alive? Because I used to always try to figure that out. What's the purpose of staying alive if you're gonna die anyways? And so I'd always fight that with myself. I'm gonna die in 40 years, 30 years, 20 years, whatever. What's the purpose of doing that? Why don't I just end it now and just stop wasting time? Well, it got back to, who am I going to hurt the most, and whose opinion matters the most of me? Whose opinion matters the most? And honestly, the only one that matters the most of me, what matters the most is what my kids think of me and what God thinks of me. No one else matters. Not that it's not disrespectful to say that, like your opinion doesn't matter to me. It does, but not on the same level as my kids. And letting them down would hurt me the most. Like if I were to grow up and be just like a gangster or something, or dealing drugs or being a knucklehead, the way that they would turn out would affect me the most. If they came back to me in their 40s or 30s and be like, yeah, you really fucked me up. And so that led me to believe that they're my why, and they are my why. And so everything I do today is because of them. And anytime I get into a problem, I figure out my how, because I know my why. And the how just develops. It's like, well, how are you going to do this? How are you going to juggle 3 daughters, 3 different moms, this, that? How are you going to do it? I always figure it out. Because the how just develops. Because you know your why. So they're my why.
James, what's your why?
Yo, it's a good question. At this state of my life, it really fucking Marcos over here sideswiping my ass.
Sorry, dude. I have to know.
No, my why now, man, is kind of like what Colt said. And you know this, Marcos. Like, I'm at that phase where I'm like, yeah, I do want to become the father that I feel that I didn't have. Like Colt, I know you didn't have that father figure. I grew up with that father figure too, and I want to be able to create that life for my kids. I don't have them yet, but Desiree and I are very much serious about that point. We're getting married in a few months. And for me, it's like, look, the why for me is to support kids and all that. But then also at the same time, I feel like God put me on this earth to help people with health, wellness, and just the overall like abundantly amount of like unhealthy happenings in America. So I like feel like that's like my career why, if that makes sense, and then like my why. But like I feel like it's also at the end of the day just to serve, to serve and to be in that servant mindset. You know what I'm saying, Marco? So that's me.
Yeah, like you said earlier, being a vessel, right? Versus just being a what did you say instead of the vessel? Was it just an
Just like a
individual?
random dude, like
Just
a
like
dude.
it's just
Yeah.
NPC.
So yeah, everything I leave off with is always like, like choose, like you got to choose, and you guys can do the same thing. But what I'll leave you guys with is choose who you want to be. You know, do you want to be a vessel? Do you want to be like an offering to the world? Right? An offering you don't have a choice anymore. Like you're responsible for everyone else other than yourself. So you have to basically give up your life then to serve others. Or you can be, just a normal dude that does everything for himself. To me, when you say, I just want to be a normal dude, I just want to walk through life and just experience the basics, in my eyes, that's selfish. I believe in selflessness instead of being selfish. Selfish is an ideology of just an individual that's all about themselves. The more you worry about just yourself, the less that you're going to have everything other than that, I believe, personally. I believe the
Yeah.
world is an energy field. The more you do, the more you give, the more you get. And you don't get it just monetary. I believe it's like everything else.
The
If I
fulfillment
close my
factor.
eyes right now, if I close my eyes right now, it sounded like Ed Milet was speaking, Colt.
Yeah.
Listen to a lot of podcasts. Yeah,
But
it's hard not to talk about like similar stuff, but most of those guys got everything from the Stoics themselves, and that's kind of where I'm at. I used to follow those guys, but now I'm into following
you're getting to the root. You're getting out of the 2024 version, getting into the 24 AD.
Dude, I'm so addicted to it, man. It's weird. I read about a book every other weekish now. I go through a lot of
That's
books.
good. Are you on the audiobooks like 2x speed? I'm on that 2x speed.
You know what? I don't even follow the audiobooks. I know that's like maybe I personally don't do that. I feel like I need to earn the book. So I buy it and then I read it and then I stack it. And I have a whole section on my wall.
It's funny you say that because I have some. Well, one's a journal, but one's a book. Like it's like I'm the same way. Like, but like my thing is that like I need someone reading it to me. So like also I want to support the person, like you said. Like I want to buy someone's book and want to like pay it forward. Like this person's obviously maybe made some impact in other people's lives. Hopefully it does the same for me, or I can then pass it on to someone else. Like this was a good read, or tell me what you think. But then I also need I basically have to spend $30 to read a book at any point in time because like I need that like the conversation or the author's voice themselves. I love it when an author actually goes and does the audiobook personally, because obviously like no one can articulate what they were trying to say better than them. And like I almost prefer, I think, unabridged versions where they might throw in like kind of their 2 cents versus just reading it just off the paper. So like I run into that. I was like, oh wait, like they were off script a little bit here. Why was that? So like that's like unique to me because again, like you just said, everything's kind of a choice. Why'd they choose to do that there? And I agree, like the way you said everything, like everything in life is a choice. I made a post about this like a few months back, maybe it was like a year or two ago. Every day in middle school, we had this assistant principal come on, read the morning announcements, Pledge of Allegiance, you name it. And then at the end, he'd be like, all right, make it a great day or not. The choice is yours. And so like, it's like, okay, like what prompted him to say that? And why has that been like, I mean, granted, when you hear it for 3 years straight, like obviously it sinks in, like it's like just like in your memory bank, like you said in the beginning, like 8% of something, just it's in there forever. But as I got older, I realized I'm like, I do get to choose whether or not today's a great day. I wake up, if I do something, again, maybe a little bit selfishly, like putting that energy into myself first, I can be more selfless and be that vessel. So a lot of the stuff that you've said is like, I think key takeaways that when we talk, just Seamus and I, or have other guests on, like we really want to promote that message of like, you are a better like big person in the existence of like you said, just being here. We know the 2 things that are for certain, right? Death and taxes, right? So how do we make every day more enjoyable? And with what we do, right? Like how do we make longevity actually happen? How does the health span actually coincide with the lifespan, right? So everything that has these, I mean, they're parallels. They're not exactly the same avenues, but they really do have potentially an intersection point at some point. So we're really keen on that in terms of all the things we do and want people to live, for other people as much as possible. And that's why we continue to drive and have people on like yourself, Colt. And, thanks again, like for
sure, bro.
bless.
Take a picture real quick before I forget, man.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can take it on here or what, dude, but
yeah, absolutely.
Let's do one of these. I don't know, whatever.
Hey,
but I have proof that I was on here and be like, hey, check these guys out,
Hey, we appreciate it. And we know people will get a lot out of this. And the conversation was great. Like, I literally had to text my wife. I was like, can you go get my son? Because like, I feel like there's still meat and potatoes here and I don't want to be the one to cut us off. So
I'll come back on. Just let me know when, and
we'll do a round two. We're gonna get Eric on, and we'll do a round two. If you guys ever
have a chance, man, you guys want to come on ours, let us know. We can do a virtual one or whatever, whenever you guys are free.
Perfect. Yeah. Hey, we should. Seamus want to do one in person. We think that there's obviously a huge difference of like conversations in person and in this setting. Like, even like the energy is just different. I think all of us are, there's maybe always something else buzzing or going off and you're like, shit, like I just want to like put my stuff on do not disturb, let it go as long as necessary and just be present. So if we can make that happen in the future for round 2 on yours or back on this, whatever, let's make it happen.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, we'll wrap it there. Colt, just stay on for a second just for the upload, but Macropod, guys, comment below. The conversation about men, society, where do you stand on that? And like, how are you trying to become a vessel, not just a random dude? All right. Thank you so much, Macropod. Appreciate y'all. We out.